Hello, my name is George Sabenko. I'm a professor of engineering at the Thayer School of Engineering at Dartmouth. My co-author is Roger Hallman. He's a PhD student at Dartmouth and also a research scientist at NIWC itself. This work is supported, supported in part by the Army on a Muri grant and the Air Force Research Lab. Roger is supported on a SMART scholarship from the Department of Defense. So we're going to talk about resilient, distributed, adaptive systems. In this talk, I'm not going to say so much about the cyber aspect. I'm going to talk about multi-agent systems in general, and the blockchain aspect is also not going to be discussed in this paper in the interest of time. We do have a paper that you can reach out to us and get. It's going to appear in a volume this year, 2021. So the main purpose of this talk is to incentivize you to think and read the paper and think about our results and maybe initiate some collaboration. If you want to contact Roger or me, you can get a copy of the paper, and our emails are on the last slide. So I'm going to just jump into why, what we're doing and why we're doing it. And part of that is motivated by the various discussions going on now where sort of large, monolithic, expensive, hard to replace systems might be not as survivable as swarms of intelligent machines that are distributed and attritable. And so if you want to sort of read up on this kind of engagement, this kind of futuristic vision of warfare, look up things like mosaic warfare and to some extent something called decision advantage. So when I'm talking about swarms of intelligent machines, I mean physical, kinetic, cyber, as well as combinations of those that could be land-based, airborne, maritime, battlefield, Internet of Things, BIoT, as well as cyber. We originally were motivated by cyber, but our results are applicable to a wide variety of systems, we believe. So the problem statement is, how can we gain decision advantage in future battle spaces that involve attritable assets that only requires minimal secure communications and allows the system to adapt, effectively doing online learning during an engagement, not static during an engagement, but actually interacting and improving at the risk of attrition, improving performance during an engagement. So it's online learning. And in this particular paper, I'm going to focus on attritable assets in a principled way, and talk about, just get at some of the minimal secure communications that's required, not how to do it, that's in the paper and blockchain and so on, but talk about online learning during an engagement with almost no minimal secure communications. And the goal is to do that to achieve superior adaptation during the course of an engagement. So in terms of describing it with pictures, at the top, we've got the beginning of an engagement, and say it's a level playing field between the blue force and red force. So we've got some balance in the capabilities. And during the course of the engagement and interaction, the blue force can adapt, whereas the red force has got a static command and control system. It's not adapting to what's going on in the battle space, in the engagement. So during the engagement, what we're looking to achieve is the adversarial interaction becomes dominated by the blue force because it can adapt and learn online. So the background for this, I'm going to go through this quickly because it's sort of a standard thing, and this is a machine learning conference. The reinforcement learning problem is basically an OODA loop for an agent. So I'm in an environment, I can estimate the state of the environment. The agent needs to make a decision about what action to perform. As a result of that action, there's a change in the state and some reward or punishment. So just use the word reward. It could be a negative reward. It comes back to the agent. And so this is in other terminology, it's called a OODA loop. In control systems, it's called a feedback control system, and so on. So, but the basic question is, what's the best action for any given state of the environment? And I want to learn that, okay? And that's what the reinforcement learning. The only learning that can happen is based on the reward. And again, I'm not going to spend any time on this, but sort of the state of the art in terms of doing reinforcement learning is something called Q learning. And I just want to point out here that Q learning involves updating something called a Q table. And the Q table contains Q values that are updated whenever you're in a state and you perform some action. So you perform an action in a state that yields some immediate reward, and then you discount using discounted values looking forward. You update the value of doing that action in that state, okay? And the overall algorithm of Q learning is really a stochastic gradient descent technique that's just like backprop. The key here is that there's no prescription in the basic algorithm for how to select the state. You may not have any control over what state the system's in because there's some environment that's dictating that, and the action to perform. The theory says this will converge to the optimal policy, the optimal way to operate, if every state and action pair is tried infinitely often, but it doesn't tell you how to select them to achieve the most reward while you're doing the learning. So here we're concerned with online learning, which means I accumulate the rewards and I want to optimize the learning, converge to an optimal policy, but I'm accumulating the rewards, which could be negative. So a negative reward could be attrition in my assets. So to focus in on that and just explain it a little more, if I select the action according to the current best information, exploit what I know, I'm not going to have any exploration. So it's like going to a restaurant that you like. I'm not going to try any other restaurants because I like this one. I'll never discover the fact that there might be other restaurants that are better, that I like more than this one. So I'm not exploring. I'll end up with a suboptimal choice, a local minimum. On the other hand, if I have some unprincipled randomization, I'm just trying different restaurants willy-nilly, I'm not going to converge to eating more often at the best restaurant. So how do I allocate my exploration, which could be randomized in a principled way, so I'm going to converge? And this is the upper confidence bound paradigm exactly. So just to tell the story in pictures, I've got a variety of actions. So I'm just going to talk about one state. I've got a variety of actions. And if in this case, I try action 3, I'm going to get some reward. So the vertical axis is the empirical reward. Lower reward is at the bottom, higher reward. And so I got this sort of middle ground reward for trying action 3. Okay. So that's one instance. That's one trip to one restaurant. And I get some reward for that. Now, if I repeat that, I do multiple trials. Each action has some empirical reward. I'm going to accumulate, rather, an empirical reward. After trying this restaurant 3, I've got some average reward that I've received and a variance. And so I have a picture like this where the red bars are the mean and the green lines are the confidence interval. So it could be some number of standard deviations, again, empirically derived from repeating this. And I've sort of indicated here in blue what the upper confidence bound values are. We'll come back to that in a second. So in particular, if I just pick the red bar, the sample means, empirical means for the actions I've tried, I would pick the red one. That's already got a small variance. And so I would be exploiting, in this case, the fact that so far the mean, so far, that's the key thing, the mean is the red value for action 3. Okay. On the other hand, I could look at those means and variances and say, look, action 1, I have a high variance. I have low confidence in the fact that the value is what the red line indicates for action 1. The upper bound for that is this purple hexagon. Okay, and so the UCB says randomize according to that upper limit. So in this case, I'm incentivized to try action 1 because its potential is much higher. Maybe the variance is so high because I haven't tried action 1, and as the variance goes down, the expected value could go up. The point is, I want to sample in a principled way that allows me to learn and try things that where there could be a better outcome than I currently have, that I currently consider to be optimal, and yet still prefer to try to exploit things. Okay, so these blue lines now, interpret them as probabilities if you normalize them appropriately. And I'm going to sample according to the probability. And so this is the upper confidence bound concept. And it could be shown that this converges optimally to the best selection. Okay, this choice, this UCB paradigm. So what our approach involves is I'm going to have multiple agents randomly select these probabilities. So now I've got an engagement in which I've got multiple agents in this environment. So I can try multiple things in parallel by the different agents. And they update their empirical rewards and Q values and the confidence intervals opportunistically when the communication capability is available or when you decide to communicate. But they can operate asynchronously and maintain these Q values, means and variances and confidence intervals independently. So what we're talking about here is a distributed asynchronous upper confidence bound algorithm in which attrition can occur, so that part of the reward function is that if the reward is negative, my asset, my agent, could be attrited. It's no longer available. So I have multiple agents performing UCB independently. Each agent samples independently with little or no coordination. We could do this sampling in different ways. The details of that, possibilities are in the paper. And as I said, the bad choices could result in a compromise or defeat of an asset that removes it altogether from the swarm or the community of agents that I'm working with. Furthermore, I could have a situation where I have compromised agents. So in a cyber setting in particular, one of my agents is compromised and I can't trust what it's contributing to the learning and to the mission. Okay, so I have a Byzantine generals problem. And that's where blockchain comes in. So there's a 1/3, if more than 1/3 of my assets are compromised, then I can't operate, I'm not guaranteed to operate through that using a Byzantine agreement type algorithm. So the other sort of ingredient to this is I've got a swarm. Some agents continue to operate normally. They time step to time step are okay. Some agents get compromised or overrun. Some agents are compromised or overrun to the extent that they fail and die altogether. They're non-responsive. They can't be restored. Some of these agents could be rebooted and restored. And the agents collectively are learning about better action. So you end up with the UCB type algorithm overlaid with an epidemiological model that describes what those populations are. So I've shown the dynamics of the population model at the bottom. And the key thing to note here is that it's time varying. So there's a square root of n times t in the denominator that indicates the rate at which you can learn with the non-attrited assets that you've got. And S, C, and I, I'll explain that on the next slide. So we've got susceptible, compromised, and inoperable components to the population. And as I indicated before, if more than 2/3 of my total population is not compromised, I can't tell who's compromised or not necessarily. If more than 2/3 is not compromised, then I can operate with a Byzantine generals type algorithm. And that's the purple line is the threshold. That sort of displays what fraction has to be susceptible but not compromised. The red line shows the number of compromised under these parameters that are I'm using here to run the simulation, the SEIR model. And the critical value is that vertical red line, which indicates when does the blue line become less than 2/3 of the compromised sort of orange line. And once that happens, I can't trust the system anymore. So after 20 time steps here, the system becomes untrustworthy with these parameter settings. Under different parameter settings, I get time out to like 47 or 48 time steps. And that's when, again, the blue line equals 2/3 of, or 1/2 of the orange line. So it's, if I take the orange line and the blue line and add them up, the blue line is at least 2/3. At that point, the critical value is at time 47. Under different parameter settings, I get to go out to 52, 50, or 82, 83, 92, 93, sorry, the font is small. So under different assumptions about how hard it is to compromise, what fraction of things get compromised to the extent that they're attrited and become inoperable, that changes the learning rate of the overall system, and that's depicted in these graphs. So to summarize, we're exploring principled ways to implement distributed asynchronous online learning, so learning during an engagement. Again, in the paper, we have details about solving a Byzantine generals type problem using blockchain for resilience. And through this SEIR model, we can actually look at the dynamics of how this multi-agent system can learn even under the threat and realization of attrition. And we're hoping that these kinds of advances could be used for adaptive swarm resilience and survivability, what I mentioned earlier about decision advantage especially in things like mosaic warfare. And ultimately, in sort of classical terms, we want our system to operate inside the adversary's OODA loops through this online adaptation and learning that's possible during an engagement. If you want to read more, please reach out to Roger or me. We have a paper that's going to appear in a volume in 2021 but I can't post it online just now. So send us a request and we can send you individually the paper to read. We're looking for suggestions and collaborations for moving this work forward. So welcome any interaction that we can have after this meeting. Thank you.